Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Questions and Answers. Before we jump into them for today, I do want to let you all know some stuff that's going on with the channel and the kind of shows that I'm putting out at the moment. Raven finished very recently and it was on a massive cliffhanger, and compared to most Raven videos, that video got tons and tons of people saying you have to do episode 2. I'm pretty sure, almost 100% sure, Matt and I will be doing that, but we're taking a little bit of a break from it while I play Azuric. So Azuric isn't like replacing Raven, but Raven will return just after that. Also, I've sort of sorted out loads of my channel, so if you have a look over there now, you can see it's much easier to find the playlist and stuff. It took me a little while, but I'm actually really proud of it, and it's looking pretty cool. There are a bunch of playlists on there, and these questions and answers videos, if the series gets a little bit longer, will therefore have their own one too. So I just wanted to throw that stuff out there for you all and let you know what exactly is going on. But yes, so to the questions and answers about Guild Wars 2. The first one came from someone who mailed me in-game, and I can't log in at the moment because I'm rendering something, but you know who you are. They asked me if I could make a movie about any element of the Guild Wars storyline or lore, what would I do? And there's tons of different things you could pick here, obviously. There are every little mystery you could expand into a huge story. I thoroughly like the idea of some small event that has been referenced at some point in the story, or you can potentially infer to have happened, and then like just expanding that out into a whole like film of its own or campaign of its own, right? So you hear about some small thing that happened once where Lissa visited the village of Ren. I was talking about that area in the last Q&A episode. You know, you take some small event like that and then you could turn that into a massive storyline. I think that's a really cool idea, and I can get behind stuff like that. You know, the devs talk a lot about how they want the world to feel like it has loads of stories to tell and like it's got loads of breadth, and I think that idea of honing in on one tiny thing and then expanding it into a big story is a cool way to do that kind of thing. But, you know, my answer for this has got to be, it's not a particularly creative one, but I can convince you as to why this is my answer, okay? It's not going to be about the Messiah, it's not going to be about where the humans came from, or when the gods were on Tyria, or, you know, the Giganticus loop, because there's none of that. It's on some well-trodden ground for this franchise, but if I could make a movie, it wouldn't be one movie, it would be a trilogy, first of all, and it would be a trilogy on Guild Wars Nightfall. That campaign, I cannot understate that campaign. That campaign, if you look at the raw story there, is phenomenal. It's one of the most incredible, it is the most incredible thing they've ever done. It's the only time they've written a really great story and had really strong mechanics to back it up when you actually get there in the game engine. Everything about Nightfall was incredible, and there are so many pieces of that story that would make it perfect for the big screen, okay? Think about it. We were starting off, it's got elements of everything, okay? It's huge, large-scale wars and grand strategies between nations on this continent. You know, we're talking big battles, real wars, theatres of war between Istan, Korna, and later Vabi. And you get to experience that as the player. You know, you go into this huge siege of Gandara. You watch this island nation that is famed for its navy sail and attack the mainland. And you get to be there in this huge, prominent city as the siege ultimately fails. And then at the same time, the story's got all this stuff to do with raiding tombs and, you know, the ancient history of that world and the magics that are stored there, and there's all this history layered in about the dynastic kings and this idea of the scarab plague that once wiped everyone out. And you can look at just even early on in the Istan stuff, these huge stories sort of being combined really nicely with the little ones. The story as well, it's got like really solid themes going through it. You know, it's got this idea of blindness keeps coming back and who can truly see, and there's this idea that the big bad guy at the end, Abaddon, has all these eyes, and, you know, our main character lost her vision. There's so much that just keeps getting repeated in that story, and I think you could really play into that so well if you made a movie. And then at the same time, like, the main thing that carries it are the characters in that campaign, okay? There are tons of really solid characters. We've got a story here with love and romance. If you look at like the story between Kos and Meloni and Talcora, we've basically got a love triangle going on in this storyline. You know, you can really play into the romance of that if you were to make a film. And, you know, there are other solid characters and character arcs too, rather than it being just about wars and, you know, large scale stuff that doesn't really get tied to characters. You can look at one of the other biggest characters, the greatest strategic mind that you have on your side through that game, Dunkoro. It eventually opens up how to, you know, his son died. And then that ties into the story later on. You know, this idea of a parent having to watch their own child die. That's great stuff you could tap into for a movie. You know, a real epic. And you think you've even got like comic relief characters like Norgu. You've got like the evil guy who later changes his mind and changes his way. And at first you think he's just this cold-hearted bastard. And then, you know, he has the courage to stand up to what he's been doing and he changes allegiances, right? General Morgan I'm talking about. That, again, like if you wrote it correctly and you had the best actors you could possibly have for each role, could be so good. Like, the whole campaign's got an interesting setting too. It's not just, you know, a typical fantasy type world. There aren't many like epics like that come out of the cinema that are based in a setting like that, you know, kind of an African setting with savannas and wastelands and dry plains like that. You just don't see it. So I think it would be an amazing film, or trilogy of films is how I'd do it. And it's got such a great ending too, like it's so climactic. Nightfall, that's my answer. This so much stuff, guys. Like there's themes of slavery. If you look at like the centaurs, it's just everything. It would be, I would try to make, I would have Peter Jackson direct it and basically be like, look, do a Lord of the Rings for me, but with Guild Wars Nightfall, and it would be a trilogy. That's exactly how I'd do it. Like part one, I'm gonna stop on this question soon, right? But part one would be like, it would be just to do with Istan and getting to know all the characters and everybody comes together, and it would be the tidings of war, and we'd learn a bit about Varesh, and there'd be a bit of the politics there. But basically the first film would be including all this stuff with the tombs, you know, Cormyr's accidental unleashing of Nightfall basically at the start. It would have all of this stuff tied in. It would set up those mysteries of what happened with Cormyr, but it would sort of end with the assault on Corner, and it would end, you know, with this great navy going to attack a nation. And then that would be like a great cliffhanger, and part two would then be all of the original stuff on the mainland. You know, it starts with this huge battle with all this CGI going on, this great siege at Gandhara, and then just the breaking of the Sun Spears and how their attack ultimately fails, and everybody split up again, you know, and then we have to go off and we find Kos, and then it's about everybody regrouping and figuring out what they're trying to do again. The eventual inclusion of the Vabians and going to seek them for help, and the second film would end just as Nightfall begins. You know, there's this one bit in the story where Nightfall strikes, and it's one of those bits where there's two missions and you decide which one you want to go in, and it would be just at the end of that mission where, you know, all the tendrils come up and you're like, wow, Nightfall is coming, and it would end on like that really terrifying note that, oh my god, Varesh, because at this point in the story Varesh just flees from Corner completely to go and complete her ritual, right? She shows basically that she doesn't care for the Cornans or leadership of that nation anymore. She just flees off to the desolation, and that's how the second part would end. It would be like, oh, we've had this minor victory in Vabi and we've got the Vabians on the side, but oh dear, Nightfall is coming. And then the final part, of course, would be, you know, just the utter desolation as we travel through that region, and, you know, the despair of these people who have come together, and then eventually fighting the god within his own realm. And it would have like this great I gotta stop. It would have like this great moment where we kill Varesh, right? And I'd have killing Varesh like quite early in the third part of the trilogy, and it'd be like one of these moments like, if you've been watching or reading Game of Thrones, right? Like if a key character will die, and somewhere in your mind you've always thought, oh yeah, it will probably end with the death of this character or the conclusion of this character. But then like in Game of Thrones, like one of these characters will die, and then you just suddenly sit back and you're like, holy shit, there's so much more story. This can't possibly be the end. And that's how I'd have like the third part of the trilogy start. It'd be like, yes, we've killed Varesh. Everything we've been doing has been to kill Varesh. And then you're like, well, crap, that's definitely not the end. Obviously, we've got Abaddon now, and then, you know, and then it would be fighting within there, and it would have all this stuff to do with Dunkor and his son. I think it'd be great. How good would that be? Nightfall. Definitely Nightfall. There's so much there. It's to this day the best thing that ArenaNet have ever managed to do. And the day that Guild Wars 2's personal story has that much depth and charm and well-written characters, well-plotted characters, and at the same time, you know, a campaign that's genuinely fun to play. You know, it's got cool missions, and, you know, the odd choice here or there, but it's not drowned by choices. The day Guild Wars 2 reaches Nightfall's level again, I will be so happy. And until then, I'll dream of like a trilogy, a feature film trilogy that I'd have Peter Jackson do. So yeah, the next question, sorry about that, I'm so passionate about Nightfall, I think it's brilliant. The next question is from Sir Cookie Lord, who says, personally, I find Ranger to be pretty boring, even though I liked playing Ranger in the first game. I figured that's because you could combine it with other professions. What are your thoughts on two professions versus one? Kind of two different elements of this question, I suppose. I do think, for the record, Ranger in PvE, like, well, okay, first of all, I've said that I don't like Rangers at all, especially in that draft building video. That's not like a personal assault on anybody who plays Ranger. I like people, if you chose to play a Ranger, that's totally fine. Like, I've got nothing against you. I just think that the class has too much in it that it's too passive for the amount of things that it can do. A lot of, even just the ways... Mostly it's like ranged rangers, you know, rangers using bows that just sit there, especially like QandA shortbow rangers. Even if you take away all of the annoyingness of the pet, where they get, you know, all these great things that they really don't have to try for on their pet, and you just look at the way a lot of the ranger class is designed. Oh, I pop a skill to be offensive, but, you know, I've got a million evades I can use anyway. I'm not really trying to evade. I don't have to worry too much about endurance management. I just pop all my skills and I'm evading constantly. And then the fact that, you know, they're not a squishy class, they're high vitality and medium armor, they're in a nice place, and then their weapons are basically just plink, 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 plink with their short bow, or their longbow is a little bit better. I think high glassy Rangers on longbow are a little bit more interesting, definitely, but just a lot about the way that class works really irritates me. But I should clarify, from a PvP perspective. PvE, then it's like, fine, you know, who cares what the other classes are doing in PvE as long as the person themselves enjoying it, unless we're talking, you know, really difficult stuff and you want to be speed clearing or whatever, but you don't sign up for that unless you know you want to be a part of that culture. So definitely I don't mind Ranger themselves. If I personally would find Ranger kind of boring, and I've played Ranger a little bit in PvE at least, and yeah, it's more boring than other classes, especially if you compare it to like Engineer or Elementalist that's constantly swapping around skills. You know, half of your damage is on your pet, and if you're just roaming around the world, then yeah, it's more boring. But it's not for me to tell people to not play that if they still enjoy it. So yeah, you can't really judge people for that. But anyway, your question on this idea of multiple professions versus just one. As everybody knows, or should know, Guild Wars 1 had a multi-classing system. I find it very funny when new games come out. Like, isn't WildStar? No, not WildStar. Isn't EverQuest Next going to have a multi-classing feature? And I find it so curious when games are coming out and they're saying, oh yeah, look at this cool feature. Look at how innovative we are. Multi-classing. And all I can ever think of is, that's not innovative. That's not even necessarily a good feature. Because that's exactly what Guild Wars 1 did back in, what, 2004? That's what they did. They said, oh yeah, we're going to have multiple classes, and in the end, it just became a massive headache for them. Now, I like that we have single professions in Guild Wars 2, but not necessarily because it's easier for the devs to balance skills and stuff. At the end of the day, I'm just the consumer. If it's hard for them, really, I mean, I appreciate that they should make it easier for themselves, but really, you know, I shouldn't worry myself with that. What I do appreciate with having, you know, raw classes and not mixing and matching between them is every class does feel very distinct. You know, it does feel so different being an Elementalist than to being a Ranger, because they are so different. When you add this multi-classing in, no, it all becomes way too similar. Especially look at Guild Wars 1, where there was no such thing really as a unique profession mechanic. There was one attribute line you could put points in that usually had something to do with energy management that would make your class feel slightly different. But aside from that, there wasn't too much there. And then the multi-classing too, I mean, practically speaking, a Curses Necromancer in Guild Wars 1 compared to a Domination Mesmer in many ways was very, very, very similar. They were both casters that would sit back at range. You know, what was it? Insidious Parasite, the enemy loses health when they attack and you steal that health, compared to Empathy on a Mesmer, on a Domination Mesmer, which was basically the same thing. The enemy takes damage when they attack. It's armor ignoring. And, well, they were both armor ignoring. It's just one was like life steal and had a higher energy cost. No, they were very similar. Sorry, I'm getting too into specifics here. The way that it was designed in Guild Wars 1, I don't think that multi-classing is necessarily bad, but with the way that ArenaNet set it up in the first game has soured me to the idea, and I much favour Guild Wars 2's class balance, class design, and none of it could be so strong if we were still multi-classing. There's no way it would be so strong. So yeah, I'm very happy with it so far. And I say so far because obviously they're going to be adding more traits and skills and things in, and they could dilute class lines at any point. Like, if you think about it, at launch, Guardian were the only people with a wall. You know, Elementalists had one underwater, and Engies, if they got lucky, you could sort of have something like that. But, you know, like a proper line of warding style thing, ring of warding, these skills, they were real Guardian things. They were about controlling the battlefield. And now, if you look, like, Elementalist has now got that same exact thing, but on their staff in Earth 4. And, you know, these lines do dilute. So right now I'm happy with it, but maybe later on they'll lose their inspiration and a lot of classes will feel very similar to one another again. But hey, we'll see. Levicus says, what do you think of the difficulty scaling of the Living Story so far? I'm happy with it. I don't think that general Living Story content should be the place for very hard stuff, but I've always maintained, well, maybe not always, but I've come to the conclusion recently that I think Living Story should have the bulk of it is kind of easy, mindless stuff, about as hard as it is to get world completion, okay? And I very much agree with that. About as difficult as the personal story was to complete, so nothing crazy. But I do believe that at least every other Living Story update should offer something very difficult for players to go for. And by difficult, I don't mean time sink. By difficult, I mean something like Liadri the Concealing Light or like Tribulation Mode Super Adventure Box. It doesn't have to be very long content, just very hard. Something really difficult. And I would still be happy even if that was basically a very short arena-like encounter. They put you in a very small instance and say, you know, like in Guild Wars 1, for example. In Guild Wars 1, all the Norn you would meet, you could challenge to a duel, okay? And what if it could be this basic? With a Living Story update, you could find a character who's like, aha, if you can prove that you can beat me, then you will get this title or something, right? And then you just go in and you fight him. And it could be a 1v1 thing, or it could be a full 5-man party thing. But they just make it really, really hard, really difficult to fight this person. And hopefully, you know, mechanically interesting too at the same time. And, you know, there are really basic excuse plotty reasons they can throw this stuff in. But I do think just that tiny little bit of content in there that's really difficult and is only meant to be completed by, like, you know, 1-2% of the population of the game, that's smart, and they should keep doing that, because I have most fun when it is the really difficult content, and there's just nothing to sate that. There's very little. But at the same time, I think the majority should be quite easy, because the majority of players do just want to go in and experience the next bit of the story, a little bit of new content, and then go off and do other stuff with their life until the next update comes out. So yeah. Lastly, Matt Riddle says, would you rather have a fully underwater zone or a fully in the air zone? My gut instinct was like, fully air zone, come on. Just think about like the jumping puzzle in Mount Maelstrom. Why do I always get that confused? In Metrica Province, think about that. Think about any of these areas where you're up in the sky and there's all these floating rocks. Fully air zone, that would be crazy cool. But maybe let's not knock the idea of a fully underwater zone. If the underwater zone could have air pockets and we could still consider it a fully underwater zone. Like, we all know how high the maps can be in Guild Wars 2. Think about the Zephyr Sanctum, yeah? The Bazaar of the Four Winds. From the very top of that thing, jumping all the way down to the very bottom, or the Ruined City of Arath. These are huge maps, really, really tall. Now, it fascinates me, the idea that we could have a map in Guild Wars 2 that has, you know, this incredible verticality to it, you know, really, really high ceiling to the place, and just fill it entirely with water. And it really excites me that, you know, if they could get the lighting engine just right, that we could start off at the surface and swim down and down and down and down, and it gets darker and darker as we descend. And you could, and just this idea that the majority of the content is taking place deep under the water in the abyss, and there is a surface up there, long way up there. But you're so deep down that you really get that it's going to take so long to get back up. You get a real sense for the vastness of the world. I think that could be really curious. And, you know, giant sea monsters that loom in from the darkness that, and just like swing towards you, like that guy we saw in the trailer. Oh, that would be pretty cool, I think. But you'd need air pockets at least to make it kind of interesting to, you know, because people don't like the combat down there. Perfect world, let's say it was perfect underwater combat, then yeah, there wouldn't be any problems. But you'd want air pockets, and I think it is quite easy as well. If you even if you just Google image search like underwater, there is a great variety of like environments you can create underwater, and I think in general, Guild Wars 2 has been pretty good at tapping into that. Usually, it is very pretty underwater. It's just people feel a little bit confined because they don't have access to all their utilities or all the skills that they're traded for and stuff. And that's what puts them off of it. Aside from the fact, you know, underwater combat is incredibly spammy and maybe a little bit slow-paced. But, you know, you fix those things, and I think the allure of an entirely underwater map might be more interesting than an entirely above water map. But then by the same point, by the same token, an entirely in the sky map could also have this verticality too. It would just be a lot more limiting and a lot more jumping puzzly. And we've already got a lot of content like that. We don't have any really fascinating underwater stuff. So I'm going to object from answering that because both sound cool. But, you know, don't knock underwater so quickly. It would be my answer. Anyway, there we go, guys. That's the Q&A for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please, any questions at all, just leave them in the comment section down below. This is your chance to ask me whatever you want and get your name out in one of these videos. So thanks, guys. Hope you're having a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. I don't know why, but it feels like it's been ages since the last Q&A, but I have been doing it every Wednesday. So anyway, I'll see you next Wednesday, guys. Have a good one. Catch you later.